very much so today in particular. The Tory tax-cutting arms race seems to be heating up even more. Now, of course, even in sort of the first MP voting round, we saw Liz Truss heavily, heavily go after tax cuts as the way to solve the problems of, well, the UK. This is how we get the economy back on track, she said. Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts, because, of course, this gets more people spending. We keep more, money in people's pockets. And of course, it's individuals who have a better say on what they do with their money, not the government, despite, of course, you may remember just a couple of weeks ago, we went over a very good piece written about how the government is not this economic black hole that Liz Truss seemed to be claiming it was. In fact, it can be a really good engine for spending and getting the economy going. And surprisingly, also, Rishi Sunak seems to have changed his tune on tax cuts, being, of course, in the MP voting round, very, very the only one who was against tax cuts, saying, no, we can't cut taxes, not now. It's not the right time, not with obviously all the inflation and, these tax cuts are complete, fantasy economics. But even now that they're through to the second round, and of course they've got to try and attract the members, well, even Rishi Sunak has succumbed to this today, saying that he will deliver tax cuts you can believe in. Whatever, that may be. And of course, we've said before, this doesn't make a lot of economic sense, because if you cut tax, then there's two ways this is going to happen. Either A, you have to borrow more money, or you have to cut government funding somewhere. So, that's the obvious economic, answer really to what's going to happen here. And I've been waiting for sort of more economists here, like, we're going to cover a piece by William Keegan going over these tax cuts that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are currently promising and how they are, again, not good economically for the UK and are certainly not going to solve the UK's economic problems. So before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a reputation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, there is the YouTube thank you button and, of course, the YouTube subscription button, where you get badges, emojis, and you get a free super chat a month as well. So over today, over to The Guardian to cover William Keegan's piece on his view on what the Tory tax cuts are probably going to be such a disaster for the UK. So this obviously comes from The Guardian, the title of Tax Cut Stunts Can't Cover Up the Disaster That Is Brexit. They are trying to hide the failure of Brexit behind policy stunts. This observation about the fiasco of the Conservative Party leadership contest came up from an economist friend and neatly sums it up. Liz Truss, who voted Remain but is now an ardent Brexiteer, cannot admit to herself that she was right at the time, and that the trade deals she goes on about are supposed to have made up for the crass departure from the European Union do not amount to a hill of beans. And that is, I think, something that can certainly be used against the opposition. Well, at least the opposition can certainly use it against Liz Truss, because they can just quote all her warnings and what would happen, because of Brexit, and it's all happening. And that will certainly, I fully expect, the Liberal Democrats and Labour and the other opposition parties to certainly use her own words against her, because it is very likely she is going to win. So anyway, back to her. Sunak, who has always been a Brexiteer, must surely have learned from his time as Chancellor that the Treasury's hostility to Brexit was right all along. He is an intelligent man, but like Truss, is fantasizing about the Brexit opportunities that the Treasury and other Whitehall departments know are chimerical. Whichever contender succeeds, the worst Prime Minister in living memory will have to come to terms with two fundamental consequences of Brexit. One is that the Office of Budget Responsibility has estimated a 4% annual loss in gross domestic product. Not only will this make the country poorer, but will severely limit their tax cutting ambitions. Hers now and his later. And foolishly, losing tens of billions of potential tax revenues through Brexit is not a good start to either of their ambitions. The second is the devaluation of the pound by up to 12%, with the financial markets attributing it to, yes, Brexit. This has not made only the country poorer, but has also severely aggravated the inflation problem the government and again the Bank of England now face, with the growth price now running significantly higher than most other European and G7 nations. And again, whoever gets in, it will probably be Liz Truss at this point, will have to deal with inflation. And it is something that they are going to have to get under control. And so far, we have not heard a serious plan to try and solve this problem. This is what's really worrying. The fact that they are sort of putting forward policy proposals in a very fanciful light, which aren't going to solve the serious problems we are facing. And as I've said, even if Truss gets in, and even if somehow Sunak manages to dethrone Truss from a very commanding position that she's got at the moment, they've both got that cost of living crisis that's going to absolutely explode in November. And when that hits, you know, they're going to have to do some very un-Tory things, which is going to make them very, very unpopular. So anyway, it continues. So because they are not facing up to the consequences of Brexit, the leadership contenders have resorted to promising major tax cut stunts. Truss, and to a, quote, Thatcherite approach to the public finances, stunt Sunak. This tax-cutting business is wholly writ amongst the right-wing Tories, and a classic illustration of cloud cuckoo land in which they reside. They may not have noticed, but most UK citizens are not only suffering from a severe squeeze in real incomes, but also are only too very well aware of the dilapidated state of much of our infrastructure and public services. Public services which need to be paid for. And, you know, we said this at the beginning. If you are going to cut tax, there are two ways you go about it. You either A, have to borrow more, or you have to cut public services. So which is it going to be? You know, and I really wish they'd journalists would start asking that questions. You know, if you're going to cut taxes, which is going to suffer? Our public services, which are already at bare bone levels, and especially in education, where we've talked about, you know, sleepwalking into an education crisis, which will be the next crisis. And again, the Tories do not have a plan for this. So, you know, it's all going to be one big disaster after disaster that they will have to face. But anyway, let's continue. So the truth that they dare not speak its name in right-wing circles, and even the modern Tory party is dominated by right-wing tail that wags the dog. This improvement, it is that improvements to public services require tax increases, not decreases. And there has been a much fuss recently about our historical high levels of taxation. But in those European countries, not least Scandinavia, whose public services we in Britain tend to admire, public spending and taxation are much higher as a proportion of gross domestic product. Sunak's obsession with his punitive Thatcherite credentials is worrying, but he's paying enough attention to the social implications of budget cuts now affecting the public sector. Many experts think that the industry troubles on the railways are only just the start. Even former Treasury Permanent Secretary Lord Macpherson recently observed that through the public expenditure must be controlled, it is worth remembering that the 1931 Ingerviergen Mutiny, he points out, that the HMG is just currently seeking much bigger real pay cuts than those that caused the social disturbances all those years ago. When Jack Kennedy was running the US to be US president in 1960, he said, "I do not run for office with any expectation that it is empty or an easy job. He was running because it was the center of the action. And in a free society, the chief responsibility of the president is to set before the people the unfinished business of the country." Sunak and Truss are not standing to be president, but Whoever wins will face the almighty problems at home and abroad. And so far, one can be forgiven for thinking that they are vying to be host of a game show, with what they should be doing is facing up to the unfinished business, recently described by Spain's El País as a time to sow the seeds of Brexit reversal. And of course, the immediate problem, of course, is our candidates feel obliged to pay the obsessance to the pro-Brexit prejudices of so many of their members. For Truss, this is no problem. She has developed a loathing for the European Union that has not been lost on Brussels and Dublin. It is just the economic damage of Brexit that needs to be repaired. For obvious geopolitical reasons, we need to get as close as we can to the EU. And frankly, I think Truss is beyond the pale. One must hope that Sunak wins and then is able to make some serious assessment as to whether the country's internal interests lie. This would involve learning the lessons of the failure of Brexit and recognizing that the Thatcher miracle was not all it was cracked up to be. So that is the serious problem where we are. And I'm very much in agreement with what Keegan's putting forward here, that Truss and Sunak are really currently not really addressing the serious problems that we are going to face. And that is very, very worrying, because whoever gets in, and to be honest, the good money is on Truss. If you've seen the polls, if you know that we've been following our Good Morning Walks when we've been talking about it, Truss is leagues ahead on all the polls at the moment of Tory party members. Why? Because she says the right things. And the problem is, what you may remember from the Conservative Home article we went over a couple of weeks ago, they even laid it out. A very hard conservative blog laid it out very clearly as well, saying, look, do not believe the promises that these people are going to say. Listen to what the policy they are offering and think about the real problems the country is facing, because electing a populist is not going to be good. And unfortunately, it seems that the membership is definitely on course to elect another populist, being, of course, probably Liz Truss. And that isn't going to help our economy. It is not going to help the country one single bit. And especially with November coming up. If Liz Truss gets in, and of course her name was, the hand grenade, well, come November, she's certainly going to explode. She's going to be facing a myriad of different crises, not just the cost of living crisis, but a myriad of different crises, which she has no answer to. The Tory party has no answer to these serious problems that are facing the country. And that is going to lead to other disasters. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a organization called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. And of course, we'll see you all next time.